The rifle felt wrong in her hands the moment they placed it there. Maya ran her fingers along the barrel and felt the crack, a fracture so deep she could fit her fingernail inside. The firing mechanism clicked uselessly when she tested it. Around her, the other recruits checked their weapons, their faces grim but determined. No one met her eyes. They all knew what a broken rifle meant in the resistance. It meant you were expendable. Have you ever been given something broken and been expected to succeed anyway? Have you ever felt like the world handed you the impossible and waited for you to fail? Hold that thought, because what happens next will change how you see every challenge in your life. She was 17 years old, and the war had already stolen 5 years from her childhood. The commander they called the Viper controlled the northern territories with an iron fist, and his forces had burned her village to ash when she was 12. Maya had watched her mother push her into a cellar, had heard the screams go silent one by one, had emerged to find nothing but smoke and bodies. She joined the resistance not for glory or revenge, but because doing nothing felt like dying twice. The rebels took anyone willing to fight, but they saved the working weapons for those they believed would survive. A broken rifle was a death sentence dressed as an opportunity. The mission briefing was simple. The Viper would be inspecting the garrison at dawn. 12 shooters positioned on rooftops. 12 shots to end the tyranny. Maya's position was furthest from the target, nearly 400 meters away. With a working rifle and a skilled marksman, it would be difficult. With her broken weapon and her 3 months of training, it was impossible. She nodded anyway when the commander asked if she understood her role. What else could she do? Protest? Cry? She had learned long ago that tears were a luxury the war could not afford. That night she sat alone with the rifle and studied it like a puzzle she had to solve. The crack ran through the barrel's rifling, which meant any bullet would tumble chaotically if it even made it out. The firing pin was loose, causing misfires. The sight was misaligned by at least 15 degrees. Any reasonable person would have abandoned the weapon. But Maya had stopped being reasonable the day she crawled out of that cellar. She thought about her mother, about the way she had smiled even in the hardest times, about the strength that came not from having perfect tools but from refusing to surrender. If this rifle was all she had, then she would make it enough. She worked through the night. Using a piece of wire from a fence, she stabilized the firing pin. She removed the broken sight entirely and carved a simple notch into the metal with a stone, creating a crude but functional aiming reference. The barrel she could not fix, but she could account for it. She fired 3 precious test rounds into sandbags, studying the erratic paths, understanding the chaos. There was a pattern to the unpredictability. At exactly 370 meters, with the wind from the east, accounting for the tumble and the deviation, there was a narrow window where the bullet might fly true. It would take perfect timing, perfect positioning, and something close to a miracle. But miracles, Maya had learned, were just preparation meeting desperation. Dawn arrived cold and gray. The 12 shooters took their positions. Maya climbed to her rooftop, the broken rifle heavy across her back. Below, the streets began to fill with soldiers. The Viper's convoy approached, black vehicles cutting through the morning mist like sharks through water. She could hear her heartbeat in her ears, could feel the rough concrete beneath her stomach, could taste the copper of fear on her tongue. The other shooters would fire first. She was backup for the backup, an afterthought. The Viper stepped from his vehicle, his metals catching the early light. He was smaller than she imagined, almost ordinary. Then the first shots rang out, 1, 2, 3, chaos erupted below. The Viper's guards surrounded him, began rushing him back to the vehicle. Maya's fellow resistance fighters had missed. Smoke grenades deployed, obscuring the scene. In seconds he would be gone and the war would continue and more villages would burn. But through the smoke, for just a heartbeat, she saw him. 370 meters, wind from the east. The exact conditions she had calculated. She didn't think. Thinking would have reminded her the rifle was broken, that she was just a girl with 3 months of training, that this was impossible. She simply aligned the crude notch, accounted for the tumble she had mapped in the darkness, and squeezed the trigger. The rifle kicked hard against her shoulder. The crack echoed across the rooftops. And then, through the clearing smoke, she saw him fall. The Viper's regime crumbled within weeks. The resistance spoke of the shot as legend, as fate, as divine intervention. But Maya knew the truth. It was not the rifle that had been broken. It was a world that measured worth by what tools you were given rather than what you did with them. They had handed her something useless, expecting her to fail, and she had turned their dismissal into her strength. Years later, when young fighters asked her secret, she would smile the way her mother once did. There are no perfect weapons, she would tell them. There are no perfect circumstances. There is only what you have and what you refuse to let it stop you from becoming. Sometimes the world hands you something broken. What matters is whether you break with it or build something new from the pieces. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that your broken pieces might be exactly what you need to create something extraordinary, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Because sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is remind each other that we are stronger than what tries to break us.